requirements for the rebate program is that you put in low or very low water using plants from our qualifying list. So we have a list that we send out, and for this particular garden we were able to go through the list, choose plants from the list that worked with this particular this climate, the sun exposure, different things in the garden. So this garden contains kind of a mixture of native and non-native plants, but they're all, can take a Mediterranean climate, which means dry summer, hot dry summer, and wet, cooler winter. But so there's different plants from different parts of the world in here. Majority of them are California natives, but there are some other plants in there too for a little added color and a little added greenery during the year. Any of the customers, applying for the rebate will submit a plant list. So for this garden, we took a look at it, figured out what kind of plants were going to be used before submitting the application, and then with the application, we sent in a plant list with all the names of the plants and then the number of plants that we were using. For this, we were able to determine whether the garden met the 50% plant coverage requirement. This particular garden is well above the 50% plant coverage requirement, so it might look like a lot of plants, but we wanted a little more lush, a little more filled in. If you want something a little more sparse, you can go a little bit lower and not put in quite as many plants. Right now, they all kind of look, the same and low and the same size, so it's hard to visualize what they're going to look like. But even in a few months, they're going to start growing. By next spring, you're going to get a lot of growth on it, and you'll start to see the differences in heights and textures and just how the plants are laid out. So going through the middle of the garden, we kind of have a swath of different type of grasses and rushes and sedges that you can use. So this is going to have a flow through the garden of a kind of like a grassland, almost mimicking a creek or something, but just kind of giving a little more feel to it. So the center of the garden, we have Berkeley sedge, we have juncus, which is a California native. We have California fescues in there, so you're going to get a variety of textures and shapes and colors just within the grasses themselves. We also have some non-native, so this is a Formium. It's a small variety, but it's going to add a little bit of color to the garden. It'll just stay this kind of deep, almost purplish color, which you don't get with some of the natives. And then the front area here, we have one of my favorites, and they don't look like too much right now, but they're going to grow in. This is a native, it's a rosy buckwheat. They're going to stay a little bit low and get a nice tall pink flower on it, and the flowers are really great because they go through a number of stages. So the flower will, it'll merge, it'll flower to be dark pink, then it kind of turns to a rusty color when it starts to die, and then to a lighter brown. And I actually like the dead flower part as much as I like the blooming flower part. So there's a lot of different kind of buckwheats, native buckwheats. I have a sulfur buckwheat at my own house. I love it, bright yellow flowers on it. We have another variety of buckwheat in the back over there. It looks a little stressed right now. Sometimes when you plant new plants, they're sitting in pots, they get hot, they might get a little bit stressed, but they usually will bounce back just fine. But that one's a much, much larger variety. It's going to get pretty tall with a white flower on it. It's St. Catherine's lace. So there's a lot of variation even within the same genus of a plant. Another one that I really like is this one back here, and it's a Dendromecan. It's a California native also, and it's just got a beautiful showy yellow flower on it. A lot of times people think that natives are kind of brown and boring and dead and cactus, and they're not. There's really a lot of lush, beautiful natives. This one right here, the Carpinteria, is going to get a white flower on it with a really intense yellow yellow center, and it's just it's a really great plant. It's going to stay dark green all year. A lot of the plants in this garden, people get worried that during the summer it's going to go brown and look ugly. I made sure to put a lot of plants in this garden that are just at least going to stay a deep green all year. So we have a number of different manzanitas and ceanothus in the garden. So right here we have a swath of low-growing manzanita that are kind of mimicking the swath of grass over there. And in the front we have a couple really low-growing ceanothus, which are both native. And the ceanothus in the spring, you'll have a really intense, blue flowering period, and then for the rest of the year, they're just a nice solid green. Have a little bit of backbone to the garden. So you want to think about year-round color, how the garden's going to look, at every season. So just make sure that you have some plants in there that might just be solid green for the whole year, others that are really showy another part of the year, but might not be as interesting the next part of the year. But at least you have something else to take its place. So when the ceanothus stop blooming, your buckwheats are going to start blooming, things like that. So you're going to get a combination of flowers in the garden. And because these are all natives, they're not going to use too much water. So really, we're putting in the drip irrigation system now. They're going to get established, but after a few years, you can, especially on some of them, really cut back the water quite a bit. You might not even need to water the garden at all after a while. With natives also, and with some other plants, if you don't want to put in a drip irrigation system and you just want to hand water and you're committed to watering when you need to in the beginning period, you can hand water these plants in the beginning, and then as they're more established, you can stop watering these plants, so you won't need to water. Some of them you might need to come out and hand water for a little bit, but really if you want to forego the drip system process, you can choose plants that allow you to, not water anymore. So. There might be some parts of your garden where you don't want to add plants to it. It might be a little bit harder. In this parking strip area, it used to be lawn. These narrow strips of lawn are extremely hard to irrigate with overhead irrigation without losing a lot of water. So this is a really, really great, it's a small area, but it's a really great area to convert from lawn to something else, because it's just really hard to keep the water where it's supposed to when you have these strips. So in this particular area, this customer chose not to put plants into this area, but she did put permeable material. So this is a natural cobble. Below it is the weed cloth like over there, but rain is just going to be able to absorb into this area, soak back into the ground. So it is a qualifying area for the landscape rebate program. And then the plant material, she chose to concentrate over on this side. So both of them are ways that you can qualify, but kind of pick which areas you want your plants in.